Okay, so I have taken my slab. I actually, since the last video, I just rolled it out a little bit more. You can actually see it starting to go over the edges a little bit. And you want it to be, almost touching the edges or just touching or going over the edges a little bit on the side to make a mug the size that I'm going to make it. So I am starting with just a boring old sheet of regular 8.5 by 11 paper. And I'm going to actually use this as a template for my mug. So you don't have to do it this way, but this again, it's just an easy way to kind of get started. I'm going to take this piece of paper and fold it in half. And this is actually the mug. So what's going to happen is I'm going to take this and put it on the clay and cut it out. And then if you take this and fold it around, that size is the size of the mug. Okay, so however big you want, if you wanted to use a piece of paper as a template, you can get a sense for what size you want, and just make sure that your slab is big enough that you can put the whole template on the piece of clay, without there, that it's big enough to cover the whole thing. I'm going to try to do it so that it's not right up against the edge, because sometimes the edge is a little bit thinner. So that's a good spot. So all I'm going to do now is cut this out, and I'm going to use a bamboo skewer. This doesn't have to be like super duper sharp, but it can be. Some people like to get a ruler out and then go over the edges like that. I typically don't, because it's clay and it'll move around a little bit. So even if I try to cut it exactly straight, by the time I fold it, I feel like it's not exactly straight. So I don't typically worry about it. So I guess I should stand up here. So there's one. Just kind of going right down the line using this template. It's actually surprisingly straight for me. Sometimes I do this, I don't even use a template, I just eyeball it. So you don't have to do it this way. You can just guess. But you can see this is a pretty long rectangle. Okay, so now I'm going to take the extras off. And right away, I'm going to take this and bundle it back up, because hopefully I can use this again to make a bottom. Okay, now I've got it squished back into a ball. I'm going to set this on my clay pile over here. Cover it. And then here, just take that off. Okay, so here is my rectangle for the mug. So as I showed you before, I'm just going to take this and wrap it around. Because I'm going to wrap it around, I want to try to get as much space where it comes around and joins, where the two sides, this side and this side, are going to touch. I want to try to give it as much surface area as possible. So what I'm going to do is sort of set this up in a miter cut, which is to say, I'm going to try to cut this at an angle and cut this at the same angle or close to the same angle, so that when they come across, there's a little bit of overlap. You can actually take both sides, you don't have to miter cut it, you can actually take the whole thing and just literally overlap it like this, one where it meets like that. This will be a little bit cleaner if I do it this way. But it's also a little bit harder to do this way. So, you can kind of experiment and see what you like. So I'm just going to take my tool and hold it at what I think is close to a 45-degree angle. I could do this with the nail. I just happen to have this bamboo skewer. And I'm just going to run this right down the line and just make a very, very tiny cut. It's not even a very perfect cut. That's okay. Because it's clay, it will allow me, it'll sort of be forgiving. Okay, so since I did a cut like this, I'm going to try to hold this the same way and do the same cut on this side. Just go right down the line. Okay, so there you can actually see the piece that came off there. So you can really see that angle, I think there. This angle's a little harder to see. Okay? All right, now one thing about working this way that's a little bit different is you're definitely going to need some slip. Every time you put a joint together, you have to score and slip. And I'm going to save this little piece of clay, which I got off of there, because I'm going to use that to reinforce the joint as well. So this is the sort of slightly tedious part of doing a slab. So now both parts of that clay that I just cut, where it's going to touch each other, I'm going to score. I like to do this while it's flat. I got to get that little piece of clay out. And I'm going to score this side too. And I'm going to go ahead and put a little slip right down this line. So now there's slip already in the joint. Okay, here comes the fun part. So you're going to have to act like a crane. You want your hands to work together as much as possible. So I'm going to pick up the edge and start to turn it. And you have to do this when the clay is really soft. So now that I've got it about 90-degree turn, it'll hold itself up. So if you try to make this really tall, or if you make this really thin, it gets really hard to control. So don't get super ambitious on the first one. Don't make it super high. So I made a half a piece of paper high. And then also I made it about somewhere between 3 4/4 thickness. So now where the joint comes together, you can actually see where the overlap is. And I'm just going to keep lightly rolling and touch it around until it meets. Okay, so now I'm just going to put a little bit of light pressure on it, very carefully. And I'm just going to keep working that in. You can see that it's not perfectly even on top. I'm actually kind of like that. But later on, when it gets hard leather hard, I could cut it so that it's more even. Okay, so now I have a cylinder. And now I'm going to take this little tiny coil of clay, or I'm going to take this little piece of clay and make a tiny coil out of it that's small. Okay, and then I'm going to slightly flatten it, just tapping it with my finger. Don't have to do this, but I think it just makes it a little bit easier to get it all the way into the joint. So now I'm going to take this and I'm going to, where the seam is, where the two pieces of clay joined, I'm actually going to score. There's already slip in that joint, so I don't need a whole lot more. I'm just going to put a little bit of slip in there, just to make sure there's enough. I think I'm going to actually score this as well, my little coil, which I have to admit I don't always do. So if you forget to do that, I think you'll be okay. So, as long as the clay is really fresh. So now I'm just going to set that on there. Cut some of the extra off. And again, I'm just going to, using my finger on the inside to support the pot, I'm going to just try to work this into that seam. I often do this on the inside of the pot instead of the outside of the pot, but I wanted you to be able to see it. as long as you get one of the two sides, you should be okay. So now I'm using a piece of cut up credit card, and I'm just gonna lightly feather this in a little bit. I don't have to get it perfect right now. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just try to get it kind of close, and then I'm gonna let it dry. And then as it gets drier and stiffer, I will be able to work it in a little bit more when it's soft leather hard, and even at hard leather hard. And then I can even cut off the excess, excuse me, if I need to. So there we go. So that is the joint now, kind of how I like it. So you can kind of see it's still, you can definitely tell where the joint is, but it's nice and firm and secure. And now I'm going to very carefully, you can actually see I've just made a cylinder. It doesn't yet have a bottom. Now I just need to make a bottom for it. I'm going to take the piece of clay from before, and I'm going to flatten out a disc. Okay. All right, that's pretty good. All right, so it's too big for the mug, which is what I wanted. So I can set this on top. Make sure I get this as round as I want it. I'm gonna make a mark. I'm not gonna cut it yet. I'm just gonna make a mark. So now I'm gonna flip this over very carefully. And you got it, score and slip. Okay, I'm just gonna flip it right back over. Join the two pieces together. I can have a little bit of time to sort of wiggle it around, make sure I get it just right on top of where it used to be. Great. I'm gonna push down just a little bit. And now I'm going to finally cut off the excess. And there you go. There is a mug. It's a little, let's see if I can get it off the table. There we go. Okay. So one straight-sided mug body. I still need to put a handle on it, but it's basically ready to go. So right now, notice I have yet to do a coil to reinforce the bottom. So I'll still need to do that. In this case, I'm gonna let this sit up a little bit, but I just wanna give you the sense of it. So I'm gonna use a small coils, and I'll actually do it to the inside. So I have to drop these little tiny guys in here and then use the popsicle stick or something like the popsicle stick to go in and push it. Cause I don't know that, I think if I try to put my hand in here, I think my hand maybe is slightly too big to do that. This is also where this little fella comes in handy, this little cut thing, because when I go to put those joints in, I can use this to score in the corners and then slip and then put these in and then smooth them out. Okay, very, very simple way to work. This might be something you want to try. It gives you a big cylinder in a hurry. that's even thickness all the way around. There's more things you can do to play around with this. You can add textures to the, like when you can roll in a texture. You can cut your paper templates so that it's got angles so that you can kind of fold it in different ways. There's lots of cool ways to explore, but just getting to here might be very, very satisfying. So enjoy, give it a shot, and have fun.